Hey everyone, hope you are all doing good. Welcome to our today's event. My name is Partharu. I'm Events and Program Manager for Microsoft Reactor. And yes, before we start our today's event, let's go through our code of conduct. We are all here to learn together, participate together. So please be respectful of other people's views, understanding their differences, be kind and considerate in a way we all engage. We do encourage you all to participate. Please drop all your questions in the comment section and we'll pick it up from there. I would now not like to delay further. I would like to bring in Hari from GitHub. Hey, hi, Hari. How are you doing?
Hey Path, I'm good. How are you?
All well, Hari. So today's event is like quite exciting for the startup ecosystem. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Path. First off, thanks for having us. I'm super excited to be here. And hey, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's always exciting to speak with founders, not because you're just building products, but you're also shaping the future. And at GitHub, our mission is to empower builders like you with the best tools to ship faster, stay secure, and also scale globally. Today, over 100 million developers use GitHub globally, and India, the growth is just explosive. And a large part of that is primarily thanks to startup like yours. What's exciting now is that the AI is at the front of everything and how software is being written and built. And over 46% of code on GitHub today is AI generated. And that's not just a prediction, but it's just present. The shift is helping startups shorten their development cycles, reduce technical debt, and also stay ahead of the curve. Now, you might be wondering why GitHub for startups, right? So, GitHub is more than just a place to host your code, it is your platform to innovate. You can build with AI first coding using Copilot, automate with GitHub Actions, manage projects natively in GitHub, and also stay secure while using GitHub Advanced Security. And now with CSP billing and GitHub for startups, we made it a lot more easier to get started with the enterprise grade tools you need without any upfront cost. So, what are we going to take a look at? What's new and what will you see today? So there's a bunch of stuff that's new at GitHub as we move really, really fast. One of the things that you will be seeing today is GitHub Copilot and Copilot Chat. That would be the AI assisted code completion right inside your IDE. Outside of that, there's also GitHub Actions, which is end-to-end automation for your CI/CD workflows without really leaving the platform. There's also advanced security, now built-in tools to scan your secrets, vulnerabilities, and dependencies. Lastly, with GitHub projects, you can also manage your roadmaps. You'll also have task tracking and also Kanban boards all in one place. All of this is basically to help you ship better code, faster, secure, and with a lot more confidence. With that, I'd like to introduce you to my solutions consultant from the GitHub Solutions Engineering team. Over to you now, Laksh.
Thanks, Hari. Hey, everyone. My name is Laksh Tyagi, and today we're going to be diving into everything that Hari just said. We'll be exploring the GitHub platform end to end and looking at what you can do when it comes to building software, deploying software, and securing software with GitHub. So, with that, I'll share my screen and we'll get right into it. All right. So, welcome again. And I'm really excited to introduce the GitHub platform to all of you. I'm sure GitHub is something that's familiar to every engineer, every developer, product manager, or anyone who's building software today. But there is an entire side to GitHub, which is how GitHub caters to building software for enterprises, how GitHub secures your code, how GitHub makes you more productive as an engineer, and how GitHub helps you deploy this code and bring it in front of your customers securely and effectively. And these are all points that we will be talking about in detail today. We'll be going over some specific challenges that the DevOps landscape faces and how the GitHub platform plugs these challenges in. And then, of course, we'll be looking at a demo of the platform where we'll talk about all the interesting things with GitHub Actions and GitHub Advanced Security. But of course, we'll be diving deeper into GitHub Copilot as well. And we'll be talking a little bit about our latest and greatest with the GitHub Copilot agent. Please feel free to drop your questions in chat as they come up, and I look forward to this session. All right. So before we get into GitHub, I think it's important to talk about the state of DevOps today. And DevOps is really the fundamental building blocks of how software is built and deployed. But a lot of organizations unfortunately operate in silos, right? There are a lot of SaaS products that you can use today that make your life easier as a developer, whether that's in terms of being more productive, collaborating with your teammates, or even just talking to all of the stakeholders to understand what the best product to build finally is. It's very complex to build a CI/CD pipeline, and there are some great products for that as well. But unfortunately, all of these products operate in their own respective silos. The sheer overhead of integrating these products together so that you offer your developers the right tools is immense. And this has a cost for not just their productivity, but also the security of your organization as a whole, because maintaining these integrations means that your developers are spending a lot of time understanding how integrations work. If a particular part of the product upgrades, you have to redo the integrations all over again. And ultimately, because of so many moving parts, security vulnerabilities can be a very, very common issue here. And this is precisely what we've been hearing from organizations today, that it's really complex to give developers a set of tools or a development environment which is in line with their goals, which helps them focus on building software and not so much on the logistics of building software. And with the GitHub platform, that is precisely what we are trying to solve for today. We want to give you a platform that takes care of all the nitty gritties, that takes care of how your CI/CD flows, that helps you be more productive so that you can focus on what you really want to do, which is build innovation and software for your organizations. With that in mind, I would love to introduce the GitHub platform. This slide acts both as a summary of what the platform is all about, but also an agenda for today's session. Today, GitHub Platform focuses on three major pillars that help developers be more productive and build better software. The first pillar is collaboration. This is all about how often developers actually collaborate with other stakeholders. These could be your QA engineers, these could be your designers, your product managers, and in many cases, even your customers. Collaboration is key, and developers spend more than 80% of their time outside of their IDEs at just dealing with all of these things. With the GitHub platform, you're able to utilize the tools that we'll actually be looking at in just a bit as well to collaborate close to your code, to have complete reference to what you're building, how you're going to build it, and what the ultimate business goal is with these projects that you're working on. And you're able to do all of this within a single platform without ever having to jump out of the GitHub ecosystem. Productivity is key as well, and CI/CD really just defines how developers build today. So with the GitHub platform, you have GitHub Actions, which gives you the power of CI/CD within the platform itself. And what this really means is that you have the power to trigger your CI/CD pipelines based on different events that happen on GitHub. And not just that, you can do everything from utilizing GitHub Copilot to write or monitor these actions to get a complete set of logs when an action fails, as well as guidelines on how to fix the and troubleshoot these actions. So, as a developer, not only do you have a deep understanding of your build pipelines, what is breaking, what is not, you have the ability to fix them on the go as you're writing code and deploying it as well. And of course, there is GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot is an extension of you as a developer, giving you the ability to delegate the daily mundane tasks that you might not want to do and let Copilot do it with high quality and flexibility. Whereas you focus on the strategic aspects of being a developer, whether that's designing the right solutions, ensuring that your platform is optimized, and making sure that your code is secure. We'll dive into Copilot today as well and explore what are the different things that you can achieve with GitHub Copilot. Something I do want to add is that Copilot is a part of your software development lifecycle when you're on GitHub, which means it's not just a tool that you get to utilize within the IDE. It's a tool that you work with when you're starting to write code and ideating on the work that you need to do. It's a tool that you use to make sure that you're following best practices and writing good quality code. It's a tool that you leverage when you're going through code reviews and you want to understand what the quality of your PRs are and increase their velocity as they get merged into production. Copilot is also a tool that you leverage when you're trying to identify and remediate security vulnerabilities into your code. And we'll be exploring the how you can leverage Copilot throughout the SDLC when you're on the GitHub platform. The last pillar is, of course, security. I think about security always as being extremely layered. And if you have a hole in a specific layer, then your organization becomes vulnerable to exploitation. With the GitHub platform, we try to plug in one specific layer, and that is in terms of application security. So today we'll talk about code security, secret protection, and how we offer you natively integrated and best-in-class SaaS tooling to make sure that your code is secure before it reaches your customers. I think it's pretty common, and everybody would have heard the whole idea of shift left, where we explore the idea of identifying and fixing security vulnerabilities earlier within the software development lifecycle because it's cheaper and it's easier to do so than as compared to having your code actually in the hands of your customers, where if these vulnerabilities show up, not only is it extremely difficult to remediate them, the cost to your organization's satisfaction, the cost to your organization's reputation is massive as well. And especially for a startup, credibility is key from the get-go. When you're building MVPs, when you're reaching out to your first few customers, ensuring that they have the best experience is extremely important, and security plays a massive role in that. And so we'll today be exploring just how easy it is to work with SAST tooling on GitHub, and just how much insights you get on the security posture of your code base. And with all of this, of course, scale is extremely important. And as you know, GitHub is the home to open source software. And every day, millions of developers write billions of lines of code on GitHub to build innovation across the globe. And finally, GitHub understands that you cannot have proper software development in an environment which has locked you in. And that's why we have integrations and APIs where you can work with your best tools. You can integrate and get insights from a number of different open source products as otherwise. And you can leverage our APIs to build automations that make your SDLC smoother. So, with all of that in mind, let's get into it and let's explore what the platform is all about. We're going to be starting with collaboration because this is pretty much the first thing that a developer will do when tasks are assigned to them. Understand requirements, speak to all the stakeholders, make sure that they know exactly what to build before they start building. And then we'll go into specifics around productivity and security as well. All right. So now I'm on github.com, and I'm sure this is a page that you're all familiar with. This is my GitHub repository, right? Just off the get go, there's a lot of information that's available for you when you're on a GitHub repo. Of course, your entire code base is here. The README file is a great place to start for new developers because they get an introduction to what the project is all about, as well as instructions on how to set this project up when they're working with it. Now, given that Copilot is here every step of the way, your README file can also act as a context for Copilot that that Copilot can work with and give you suggestions on. So it's always important to have a very detailed README file, which now you can actually have Copilot generate for you as well. Here we have a list of languages and how what language is actually a major part of this product. This is also important when you're hiring new developers. I definitely know that for this particular project, I need my developers to be good to go with Java. They should be very comfortable with it. And this is all info that is readily available for me. Of course, my deployments, this particular project went to prod 3 hours ago. I have the ability to track these deployments from within GitHub itself and get more details around what exactly is going on and how is this project deployed. And this is, I'm sure, something that you guys work with almost every single day, whether that's you building software or just keeping a track on the projects that are going on in your organization. So let's dive a little bit deeper and explore collaboration at its best. At GitHub, we use GitHub issues for pretty much everything. So when I was invited to do this talk, there was an issue which was created, which asked me to come on and gave me all the context around what I need to do today. Within GitHub, whether we are talking about customers, getting customer feedback, trying to figure out which calls we need to get on, or even just planning new products and the newest changes, GitHub issues are everywhere. It's a very versatile tool for you as a developer to understand what you need to build, to have discussions with your stakeholders, and turn that into high quality code. This is precisely an example of that. For me as a developer, I've been given a task that I need to work on with details on what this feature request particularly is, as well as additional context and assets that the UX team has shared with me, things that I need to work on. Additionally, I could work with other stakeholders. This could be product managers coming in and giving me feedback. This could be other developers in my team coming in and helping me identify how I will solve this problem. And it could be just me writing notes and saying something like, I have picked up this task. Issues are also very actively used in open source projects. So whether you're a new developer, new into open source, you can go check out a new first issue. Or if you're a seasoned developer, very familiar with the code base of an open source repository, of course, you can go in and you will start from the issues, pick up tasks there, and move that to, let's say, a project board. Talking about project boards, you can do that within GitHub as well. With GitHub projects, you now have the ability to connect all the issues assigned to you and build new project boards to track these issues and their progress. So I can click on new project and get access to a whole template of different projects that I can work with. We don't force you into a specific way of managing these issues or tracking your projects. It's all about what you're most comfortable with, what meets your workflow in the best possible way, and what helps you collaborate with your team better. In this case, I'll go with the team planning template and create a new project. These are my swim lanes. Here I have the ability to pick specific issues and add them to my project board. I can even drag them across the different swim lanes and say that a project is in progress or the project is completed. Something to note is that you can build entire automations across GitHub Actions to say that if I drag my project to the in progress swim lane, then that will automatically update the issue and that will make some more changes to the issue, which would carry out a few more automations. So basically, the options that you have at your disposal are pretty much limitless with what you can do with projects and who you can collaborate with in this section. All right. So let's head back now and move on to actually writing code. So I'll head back to my repository, and we've talked about an issue that's been assigned to me. We've talked about tracking that with projects, but it's now time for me to actually get into building the feature that I need to work on. And for that, we can leverage, of course, GitHub clone this repository into my local and start working on it. But there is an easier way to do it, and that is GitHub Codespaces. Codespaces essentially is your virtual developer environment, and that is something that I have open right here. This is my virtual developer environment, VS Code, along with some other dependencies that are important for me to set up this project, ready for me to use on a single button click. Some of the biggest challenges that organizations face today is onboarding new developers to complex code bases quickly. And setting up a new developer environment could take anywhere from a few hours to sometimes even weeks because your projects are so complex, the dependencies are so complex, and documentation is not necessarily updated. Especially when you're a startup and in your early stages, you're focusing on velocity and not necessarily on the logistics of maintaining documentation. And in that case, it becomes even more important to focus on just helping your developers get started as quickly as possible. And CodeSpaces is one of those tools that can help you there. If I were to show you what the def container.json for this particular code space looks like, you'll see that I have the ability to define what are the specific VS Code extensions that I want to have as part of this code space. What are the settings that I want to predefine? as well as what the compute actually is for this particular host where this code space or VM is actually running. So again, you can define this for all of your repositories, for all of your developers, and then it's as easy as clicking a single button for your developer to get started with writing code. So no more do we have to worry about onboarding onto a new code base for 3 weeks. Talking about new code bases, it's now time to actually leverage Copilot for me as a developer to get familiar with this code base. Talking about GitHub Copilot, there's just so much to what this tool can do today. When we started off, it was more about code completions. And as you're writing code, generating code, and helping you write code faster. Then we introduced Copilot Chat, which was all about you asking questions and having a Google like functionality within your editor or IDE without having to continuously context switch and jump to entirely new tabs. We're now in an entirely new level where we have the Copilot agent, which will help you not only understand your code base better, but build entire products, features, just simply by giving out a detailed prompt. We also have Copilot Edit, which can help you generate code across multiple files, understand where the what that code is which is being generated, as also allow Copilot to actually generate new files in the right parts of the directory. And we'll be exploring a little bit of that today as well. Once you're done building, Copilot can help you review your code and give you best practices around what can be improved and how you can make sure that your PR is ready and ready to be merged into production as well. All right, so let's get into it. Before I get into the specific features of Copilot, it's important to understand how Copilot actually works and how Copilot collects context. Of course, Copilot will take a few lines above or a few lines below your cursor as context. It could also, um, if you highlight a part of your code, it will leverage that as context as well. And you can ask Copilot questions, and you won't have to specify what part of the code you want Copilot to refer to. Additionally, if you want project-wide understanding, which developers often do because you're rarely ever working in a single file, you can use separate commands in the chat window and ask questions like that. Let's look at an example. I'm going to use the workspace command to ask Copilot a very specific question. I am a new developer. Let me zoom in a little bit as well. So I'm going to ask a simple question like, I am a new developer. Help me onboard onto this code base by explaining different files and what code each file contains. So again, not the most specific prompt in the world, but just enough for Copilot to understand what my intent is as a developer. And this is something that's important to remember, that for Copilot to give you specific suggestions, you want to be very clear on what your objective and what your intent is. Help Copilot understand what you want to achieve, and you'll ultimately see great results from the suggestions that you get. While Copilot is working on giving me this information, a good thing to look at is also just the amount of models you have access to when you're working with Copilot. An advantage here is that you can administer what models you give access to your developers centrally. So if you see that you're happy with Claude 3.5 Sonnet and that is what you see the best results in, you can choose centrally to block specific models and allow for specific models. Not only does this ensure that you control and manage responsible AI within your organization, it ensures that your developers utilize the models with the best results. One more thing to note is that because I utilize the workspace command, Copilot is able to look at my entire file system and pick those files which are relevant based on the prompt that I've shared, right? So if I were to talk about, let's say, give me information around specifically the back end of my project, or give me information around specifically the front end of my project, Copilot will actuate on that intent, pick context from those files which are relevant, and give me information accordingly. So here you'll see that Copilot gives me an overview of what every directory in this project does, what are the different workflows that I'm working with, as well as a small summary of what the most important files are for me to refer to. Now, of course, for best results, prompts are key. And what I recommend is to follow almost a funnel line of questioning, where you start with a general question about the project to understand where you are, to get great context on what you're working on, and then dive deeper and into more specifics of what you're trying to build. Let's look at an example of that as well. So I'll come back to my code base and maybe highlight a particular method. In this case, maybe I implemented this particular method, and I can ask Copilot to help me identify security vulnerabilities in this code. So I'm just going to say something like, are there security vulnerabilities in this code? Now, of course, I do for a fact know that there is an issue in this code, and so Copilot should be able to detect it. But for you as a developer, this is just a best practice that you can do. Whether Copilot is helping you generate code, whether you're writing code yourself, you can always ask Copilot to review that and give you some tips on what can be improved in that sense as well. So in this case, Copilot is able to detect that there is in fact a security vulnerability. I have a SQL injection issue in this code, and Copilot gives me a very detailed overview of what this issue is, as well as how it can be fixed. This is a lot of important information for developers, especially when they're starting out building products for a startup. You're working at an extremely high velocity. You don't necessarily have a dedicated security team. You don't have a number of checks in place to make sure that your code is secure before it reaches production. So having something like this ready for your developer to use within the IDE is extremely important for not only enabling developers and making sure that they understand security best practices, but also ultimately making your product more secure. And of course, this spans across languages, this spans across frameworks that you're leveraging. So it's very effective in helping developers leverage best practices. All right. So we've talked about, just understanding the code base, figuring out whether there are security vulnerabilities in my code. Let's dive a little bit deeper now and have Copilot actually write code for me. And for that, we're going to start with Edit with Copilot. This is basically leveraging Copilot to make edits to multiple files in parallel and also give you a detailed set of instructions on what needs to be improved, what can be added, and ultimately Copilot taking care of some of the tasks that you otherwise would have to worry about as a developer. One of those tasks is, of course, writing unit tests. While unit tests are extremely important, as developers, we tend to be lazy. We tend to avoid them wherever possible. Well, now you can make sure that you achieve a high coverage for unit tests across Copilot when you're working on your products. And you can just have Copilot generate these tests for you, put them in the right directory, and if you're using the agent, actually even execute these tests for you as well. So let's take an example of that. Since I'm on Edit, I'm going to use a code base command, and I'm simply going to ask Copilot to generate unit tests for files that are relevant inside my source directory. So let's have a look. Generate unit tests for relevant files in the source service directory. I'll, just for better results, also switch my model to 3.5 Sonnet and let Copilot go at it. What you'll see now is that Copilot will identify those files that need unit tests to be generated. It will create that file in my test directory. And please note that I haven't really defined that I want it to be created in the test directory, but that is something that Copilot is able to identify and do for me. And then it will start writing code in those files as well. This is extremely effective because you as a developer are not only able to take your time and understand what Copilot is doing, it is saving you tons of work as well. So for these tasks which you delegate to Copilot, your role as a developer becomes more of that of a reviewer rather than somebody who's actually now having to sit down and write these unit tests manually. And of course, when Copilot starts generating this code, you always have the ability to iterate over that prompt. In fact, it's almost recommended that you do. Give Copilot more specific instructions. What libraries do you want Copilot to use? What edge cases do you want Copilot to cater to? And you'll see better results coming there as well. So now you'll see that Copilot was able to create tests for some specific files, I get very detailed instructions on what the changes are, what Copilot is testing for, and what these tests are going to do for me, right? If I look at the files themselves, you get a very clear diff on what Copilot was able to generate and what these test cases are actually doing. Of course, I can iterate over this prompt and try to cater to a larger number of test cases as relevant for my organization. Something to remember is whenever you're working with Copilot, you as a developer are always the final point of authority. So you'll always have the ability to either accept or discard these changes. So, as a best practice, you will, as a developer, ensure that not only do you understand the code that is generated by Copilot, that you iterate over these prompts to make sure that Copilot is giving you the right suggestions along the way. And if you're happy with it, you can click on keep, which will ensure that these changes become a part of your code base, or you can click on undo, which will remove all of these changes that were made by Copilot. Again, extremely valuable in ensuring that code generated by AI is up to your standards, that it is in line with the way your organization writes code, and that it is secure, and that you as a developer ultimately understand what you're introducing into the code base. And the best part is you can use Copilot to help you through every step of the way, so that just makes your life easier. All right. So for now, I'm going to click on undo, and we're going to keep our code as it is. And let's now look at Copilot agent as well. So agent is a lot of fun because you now have the ability to leverage the Copilot agent to carry out entire development tasks for you. And this means that whether you decide a specific task and you ask Copilot, the Copilot agent to carry it out, the agent will go from not only understanding your code base and explaining to you what steps it's going to take, it will actually implement that in the relevant files. It will run the project wherever relevant. It will run the required unit tests and let you know if it's ready to go. The best part is, let's say the agent is working on 4 different files. You as a developer could just be working on entirely different set of files as well, and you're working in parallel. And that's where the idea of the AI pair programmer and now the AI peer programmer kind of comes in. So I have a new prompt here as well, which is simply I want Copilot to create a new book property by country of origin with random countries and implement it in multiple files. I'm going to let the agent take care of it. And something that you'll see now is that the agent will identify the relevant files that I want to work on. It will identify the right places to create new methods, and it will give me a complete step by step overview of the changes that are being made. Of course, based on the results that you're seeing, you have the ability to switch between 3.5 Sonnet, 3.7 Sonnet, or GPT-4o and ensure that your developers have access to the best possible tools when it comes to writing code with LLMs. And there you go. Agent has essentially started working for me. And similar to the code edit part of it, you'll see that Copilot is giving me a step by step overview of what's going on with my project. A fun part here now is that you also have access to MCP servers and the ability to integrate with MCP servers as well. So if I click on tools, you can add new MCP servers, which could include the GitHub MCP server or a Figma MCP server or even the Playwright MCP server. Or you can manually add them in an mcp.json file as well. These are all things that allow you to fetch data from different tooling across your workflow, get that context into Copilot, and ask questions from Copilot accordingly as well. All right, so let's review what Copilot is doing for me. It's giving me information around what changes are being made to specific files, what are the steps that Copilot is taking for these edits, and then I have the ability to, of course, review these edits themselves. So it's fast enough to not block me, but slow enough for me to actually have the ability to review the code and the changes that are being made, which is again extremely important when it comes to the reliability of the code that you're adding to your workflow. All right. So with that taken care of, I'm going to let Copilot work a little bit while we now head to github.com and explore what Copilot can do for us on GitHub itself. So let's say we live in a world where I, as a developer, just used Copilot to not only understand my code base, but make changes to my code, help me identify security vulnerabilities, and do all kinds of tasks for me. I'm now ready to go and merge that code and make a pull request. Well, one of the biggest challenges with pull requests is it takes a lot of time. Developers have a hard time ensuring that their code base is up to the mark for it to be reviewed. And of course, reviewers have to make sure that they're doing their due diligence before that code is merged into production. What if you had Copilot with you at every step of the way throughout your SDLC to help you with this as well? Well, let's look at what Copilot looks like at the pull request level. You now have the ability to request reviews from GitHub Copilot about the pull request changes that you've made, and ensure that Copilot gives you some information around best practices and identify things that you might have missed as you were writing code. Additionally, you can even ask Copilot to do something like outline the details of a pull request, right? So this entire update on what this pull request contains is actually written by GitHub Copilot, where it gives me a complete outline of what is happening, and what changes I made, which is extremely important for a reviewer to do. If you now look at the review that GitHub Copilot gave me as part of this PR, you'll see a similar pattern. Copilot gives me a summary of the changes that were made. It will give me an overview of the specific files that I changed as well. And then it will help me identify those parts of my PR that can be improved or issues that might exist. One of those examples is right here. So just like we looked at the editor where it identified a security vulnerability for me, in here as well, the code reviews was able to pick up on that issue. It was able to identify that within my PR, within the code changes that I made, there is a security vulnerability. I have SQL injection, and Copilot gives me the ability, or the suggestion essentially, to use prepared statements to fix that issue. Again, extremely valuable, because now you'll notice that developers get these best practices, these hints, these nudges essentially at every step of the way. So even if you missed it at the editor level, you can dive a little bit deeper, you can create a PR, and you will see this information readily available for you at the PR level. So we are trying to make sure that your workflow is such that security vulnerabilities are not missed, that best practices are taken care of, and that you can leverage Copilot to save on that time as well. Here you'll see I have a small typo within my changes as well. So Copilot was able to spot that and give me that information too. Now, for me as a developer, it's as simple as clicking on commit suggestion, which will create a new PR. It will go through all the typical CI/CD checks that I have to go through anyway, and it will help me fix these issues in my pull request. So this is something that's available now for you to use on GitHub with GitHub Copilot. If you have access to it, please feel free to give this a shot. It's very useful, saves a lot of time, and ultimately ensures that pull requests are up to the mark before they're introduced into production. All right. So Copilot is still at it, but what we've looked at so far is extremely important, right? For me as a developer, I now have a tool in place which is present not only in my editor but also on github.com. It's able to help me understand my code base. It's able to give me insights on the quality of the code that is already written. It's also able to help me write new code, write new tests, and when I create a PR, actually review that PR for me as well. So you have this amount of support throughout the life cycle of this particular change, and that is extremely valuable from a productivity point of view, but also from a security point of view. All right. So I'm going to take a pause here and move on to the next step. We've looked at writing code, and before that, we looked at collaborating. It's now time to move on to my CI/CD, right? I created a PR, everything is good to go. It's now time for me to look at how I'll merge. What are the different checks that will happen as I'm merging code, or even checks that happen when I create a pull request. That is something that you can now do with GitHub Actions. You have the ability to build your entire CI/CD pipeline, configure it, and automate it according to your requirements. Everything within the platform itself. The best part is that Copilot is there with you during that point as well to not only help you write and create more GitHub actions, but also debug them if something fails. So this right here is your view of the entire CI/CD pipeline that is being leveraged for this particular pull request. These are all GitHub actions that are playing a role in ensuring that my code before it is introduced into production is secure, that it is up to the mark, that I've hit all the unit tests, coverage requirements that I have, and that all the builds that I need are successfully running as well. And you're able to track all of this pretty seamlessly on github.com, which otherwise would be you jumping onto an entirely new tab, trying to get into or SSO into a new product and trying to understand what all of that means. But all right, let's dive a little bit deeper into GitHub Actions and explore what they look like. All right, let's look at one GitHub action, for example. So Actions is all about leveraging events that are already happening on GitHub and using them to trigger different automations that you want to work on. In this case, we look at one of the actions that may be relevant, which is in this case a code QL alert, right? If you go into a workflow file, that will probably give you a deeper understanding of what's going on. So this is the name of a workflow that I've written where on push, so remember when I said you can leverage events on github.com to execute these actions, this particular workflow is triggered on push. And then I can define in a very straightforward YAML file what are the different builds or what are the different jobs, as well as the steps within those jobs that I want my action to carry out. In this case, we are setting up code QL, we are installing all the requirements and running code QL to make sure that I get vulnerability scans around my code base. We also have an entire marketplace that you can work with to understand already existing GitHub actions that already exist for you to work on. So let's look at that as well. So this is the GitHub marketplace where you can get a number of ready-made GitHub actions for you to integrate into your CI/CD pipelines, but also the ability to create your own actions if you so wish. Of course, the best part of this is that if a GitHub action is running, you have the access to all of their logs, all the details around the different build steps. How did they run? Did anything fail? What are the different things that I need to track as a developer? Everything within github.com itself. So we are not decoupling an important part of your SDLC from the developer's workflow. It becomes a part of your everyday work. It becomes a part of your favorite platform. It becomes a part and an aspect of the way you build software. And this is insights that, again, a developer can leverage to work with the right stakeholders to make sure that the CI/CD pipeline is smooth, that they have the right tools, the right pipelines, and a complete developer satisfaction as you're writing and building code. Now let's head to maybe an action which might have failed and look at what Copilot can do for me in that regard as well. So in this case, I have a simple action which failed for a number of different issues, but you'll look at the top here that I have a single button click to help Copilot explain the error and help me figure out what might have gone wrong. Now you may notice here that we're taking the burden away from the developer when it comes to actually writing a very specific prompt. Right? Single button click, because your code is on GitHub, because your CI/CD is on GitHub, we have the necessary context to help you identify why this particular job might have failed. And you, whether you're part of the DevOps team or as part of the development team, can look into these details, iterate over this prompt, dive into the very core of the issue, and make sure that you use GitHub Copilot to fix this particular fail as well. All right. Now I'm going to do what I really like to do in these demos, and that is to showcase the true power of GitHub Actions. And if when used correctly, how intuitive it can be for a developer to leverage actions and kind of have a complete CI/CD pipeline ready to go. I made a PR, I'm happy with it, but before I merge it, I want a QA engineer to come in and review that change for me. For that, I'm going to click on labels and choose a label which says deploy to QA. Now, under the hood, I've built an automation which will take this particular change and deploy that to a QA environment for me. If I go to GitHub Actions, you'll see that this has triggered a deployment workflow. We can explore the workflow file for this as well, where you'll say that on pull request, on the change of a label, I want you to carry out these specific jobs and all of these different tasks. Now, while there's a lot going on under the hood, and this is a automation that I'm building, from a developer's point of view, there's a lot of value in the ability to quickly deploy something to QA, ensure that your QA engineers can come in and view that information, and then you're ready to go, right? This is something that typically you might have to reach out to a number of people to who will start triggering that part of the pipeline for you. Then somebody from QA will come in, try to see if they can review it, and move on from there. So GitHub Actions with your CI/CD pipeline can essentially be a very intuitive part of your developer workflow, where it's not something that you fear or it's not a blocker in how efficient you are, but rather just a part of the way you work every single day. All right, so we've looked at a lot so far. We talked about collaboration, where we talked about issues, we talked about GitHub projects, and how you're able to identify what you need to build and how you're going to build it all within a single platform. We talked about productivity, of course, GitHub Copilot as your pair programmer, helping you not only understand your code base, but actually build it and secure it. We talked about GitHub Actions, which is your entire CI/CD pipeline in a single platform. You can identify, what the best particular way of building a pipeline is for you. It's super intuitive. It's based and triggered by different events on GitHub, whether that's a pull request or a new commit, or even just doing something like label ops and choosing the right label to deploy something to an environment. Let us now move into an extremely important part of the entire software development lifecycle, and that is security, right? Security is all about ensuring that not only do you identify issues early, that you're able to fix them, and that you're able to fix them in a way that your customers do not or are not hampered by possible threat actors who are coming in. And that's exactly what you're able to do with GitHub Advanced Security and the security features that we have on github.com as well. So let's start looking at that too. The first thing I'd love to start with is essentially security overview. So I'm currently on an organization called Octodemo. This contains upwards of 3,000 repositories, obviously a massive number. Do not be scared by the numbers. This is our demo environment. So of course, it's going to have 98,000 alerts, but typically you want this to be as low as possible. But what you have here is the security overview, essentially a bird's eye view of the security posture of your organization. This will help you not only understand what alerts are open, but also the most vulnerable parts of your code base that need to be fixed. And those parts of your development teams that need to be enabled on security best practices to ensure that they have the right training, the right tools, the right information at hand to ensure that they're not introducing new code vulnerabilities into production. So here we get information on open alerts over time. We get information on how long it's taking you to remediate these alerts. Now, of course, this is a massive number, but we look at how tools that you get with GitHub Advanced Security help you reduce this time. So there's something that we like to use when you talk about security at GitHub, and that is found means fixed, which means that when you're using GitHub Advanced Security for your application security needs, we give you alerts, we help you find issues in your code base, but we also help you fix them right there and then. And so we'll explore that in just a bit too. At the bottom here, you get a repository wide understanding of what are those repositories that have the most open alerts. And of course, this will give you a view on what are those teams or parts of the project that you need to pay extra attention on. This kind of information is invaluable because it gives your security teams an understanding of what parts of the code base they need to especially work on, and your security teams become enablers rather than people who ultimately come at the end of the software development lifecycle and try to give you things to fix. If you're a small team of just developers who are very sensitive to security vulnerabilities, this is invaluable information for you, where you get the right information at your fingertips so that you can identify and fix these vulnerabilities as well. You also have the ability to dive into specific advisories, things like EPSS scores, or essentially what is the likelihood of this particular vulnerability being exploited in the next 30 days. You get information on how we reached the severity level, what are the different scores that these severities have. And this again allows you, as builders, as engineers, as product managers, as security experts, to prioritize those vulnerabilities that hold the most value in your code base. I'll now head back and let's look at the three major pillars that security with GitHub or GitHub Advanced Security helps you work on. If I were to give you a quick overview of what these pillars are, the first one is secret scanning, which is helping you identify secrets that have already leaked in the code base. But we also have something known as push protection, which is all about blocking secrets from being added to the cloud at the commit level itself. Um, Through just letting the developer know that in this particular commit there is a secret that exists, we cannot allow you to push this forward, and that secret never ends up on the cloud. Because quite simply, if your secret has reached github.com, that is an exposed secret. That secret either needs to be revoked or it needs to be rotated. And that's precisely what you see here. With secret scanning, you get basically an overview of your entire technical depth, but also specific details on the nature of a secret leak. We work with upwards of 200 different partners who've shared their regex patterns with us. And through that, we're able to identify secrets from these partners that might have leaked. And you can filter out, let's say, if you're using Google Cloud Platform, if you're using AWS, if you're using GitHub Pad tokens, you're able to filter and identify specific secrets that have leaked. When did they leak? What part of your code base did they leak in? And also who leaked them, right? This is all information that is available for you so that you can action them immediately. In this case, I can see that this is a publicly leaked secret. I can also just click on verify again, and you'll see that this updated to publicly leaked inactive secret. So I know for a fact that this secret has been leaked publicly, but this is now inactive, so I don't have to run around actioning for this immediately. That being said, you can always filter. You can prioritize the list of alerts that you have, and you can start to action those alerts which are currently active, which pose the highest danger to your code base as well. The second pillar of application security at GitHub is code scanning. This is all about helping you identify vulnerabilities in your code base and giving you deep understanding of what these vulnerabilities are, what the background to these vulnerabilities is, and then using Copilot to help you fix these issues as well. I think the best way to show this is at the pull request level, because that's where a lot of the value lies. So let's get into it there. Um, if you give me 1 second. Huh. Okay, so let me actually go back and let's look at another repository, and we'll check out the pull request there. Usually, I'm pretty smooth with all of this, but today we're gonna take our sweet time and go about it slowly. So let's just look at the dashboard again, right? First of all, it's important to remember that when you're talking about code scanning with GitHub, we leverage CodeQL to help you identify vulnerabilities in your code. But you can also leverage any tool which basically generates a SARF file and import that onto GitHub. So you can see I have a number of different tools here which are giving me alerts. So if you're using Trivy for container scanning, for example, that is something that you can ingest in terms of data and view insights from as well. We'll focus on code QL for now and look at an alert that might be open. So some important things to remember here is there are two aspects of this. There is code QL, giving you as a developer a complete background on what this vulnerability is, right? And think of it this way: a pull request or a code change that a developer has made is their point of authority, right? They own that change, they're responsible for that change. So the likelihood of a developer going through this information when a vulnerability is detected is extremely high and a lot more effective than quarterly trainings that they might end up doing. Simply because this is important information for me to avoid this issue coming up in the future as well. So CodeQL gives me recommendations, it gives me examples on what are some best practices that I need to work on. And then we go a step further, right? So again, driving home that found means fixed value, you have Copilot Autofix actually helping you fix this vulnerability as well. So this is Copilot telling me that this is what the particular issue is, and giving me a diff on what Copilot will change in order to fix this vulnerability. Now, for me as a developer, of course, I should review these changes, make sure that this is up to the mark, and then as simple as commit to new branch, which will create a new pull request, go through all of the checks in my CI/CD pipeline, and make sure that my code is secure before it's merged to production. The best part of this is, and I wasn't able to fetch this up right now, but as a developer, when you're creating a pull request, CodeQL scans will basically show up in a similar way, where you'll have CodeQL alerts, you'll have Copilot Autofix helping you fix those alerts. And so even before this code is already introduced into the code base, you have Copilot helping you identify and fix these vulnerabilities. Okay, and now it's time for us to get into the final pillar of GitHub Advanced Security, which is secret scanning. Depend upon. So we talked about securing your code, we talked about securing your secrets, and you also have Dependabot, which I'm pretty sure you might have explored as well if you're writing code on GitHub regularly, which is all about securing your software supply chain. So in this case, you will get information around vulnerabilities in your direct dependencies, and in some cases, your transitive dependencies as well. What are these vulnerabilities, and what versions do you need to bump them up to ensure that your code is secure? Think your typical log4j issue, right? Issues in your dependencies means that your project is vulnerable as well. These need to be actioned, these need to be fixed, and Dependabot makes it easier for you to do that. Of course, you can filter based on the kind of packages that you're using, the parts of your software that you want to um, prioritize, and of course, the severity of the issues that you're seeing as well. And in this case, this is an example of what an alert like that looks like. So you can create a security update, which is essentially a pull request, which opens up, bumps your dependency into the right version, and then you're good to go to work with that as well. Again, something that I really want to drive home is that this is all context that you have in your hands on github.com, right? These integrations, these different tools that we've looked at, this information that we've explored, this is all single button clicks. You go to settings, you enable what you want to enable, and you have this data at your fingertips. This is invaluable for developers to make sure that the code they're building is in line with the quality that they want to maintain, is in line with the security best practices that you want to ensure for your organization as well. It makes it easier, it's focused on developers' satisfaction and ensuring that their workflows are optimized, and ultimately gives you the ability to write better code. All right. So I think that pretty much covers the demo aspect of the session. I think we're right on time as well. I'm going to quickly summarize what we talked about today before I dive into a very quick Q&A. So we've looked at the different aspects of the GitHub platform. There's obviously so much that you can do. Things that I would love to have covered again, but maybe for another time. But ultimately, you have three major pillars on the GitHub platform. When you're writing code, we help you collaborate better. Your productivity is taken care of with Copilot and CI/CD with GitHub Actions, and you have a complete set of security tools to ensure that your application, your code is secure. The idea is to give developers the best set of tools and to help them focus on building quality software. All right. With that, I'm going to take a pause now and maybe look at a few questions that we might have as well.
So
Okay.
yes, hi Lakshya. So we have
Hey,
a
Bob.
question like to reduce the billing when in agent mode. What do you think is the best practice?
Fair question. I think this is becoming something that comes up regularly. I would say whenever you're working with Copilot, whether that's about billing, whether that's about just the quality of suggestions, the best practice is to be as specific as possible about your intent and your objective, right? If you give agent clarity on what you want to achieve, you would not have to regularly iterate over your prompts. If you understand your intent as a developer, agent will be able to follow on that intent and help you build code better, and that will ultimately have a direct effect on the quality of your suggestions, but also how much you're able to save in terms of billing. So I think just right off the bat, that would be the best thing to do.
Okay. So there is another question. Like what is the best way to use agents to keep the minimum billing? Like if I want to find the performance issues in overall code, it takes time and I guess a lot of tokens. What is the best way to manage it?
Yeah, I think similar to what I just answered last time, it definitely is going to be a thing because when you're using Copilot agent will have its own interactions with the LLM. It will send its own prompts depending on the problem that it's trying to solve. So being specific with your outcomes, trying to understand what the objective is, and using the agent to achieve that as specific as possible would be the way to go. Yeah.
Okay. So I hope that answers the questions. And yes, Pranam, you have a question with the Reactor team. I'll drop you an email address with the Reactor team, and you can drop the query to the Reactor, and we'll take it up from there. So final call to drop in all your questions.
Looks like we have a rather quiet audience this evening. We'll go one last time around the room to see if anybody has any questions, and we'll be able to address them as well. If not, then we can wrap this up, Parth, and please feel free to like complete the survey on our behalf. That'll help us, improve the overall experience with you guys. Also, and make sure that we actually share better content with this audience primarily. So that's the
Sure.
objective as well. So
I am just sharing a link, and okay.
there is a startup program for, a GitHub startup program, AV. We will be happy to like chat further on that. If you don't mind dropping me a note, I can share my email and then just reach out to me and I will like get you set up with that. Just going to drop my email right here. Oh, maybe it doesn't let me do that at this point. But it's hariharvenkata at github.com. If you can share your email, I can also reach out to you otherwise.
Or you can connect Hari on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah. Parth, I'm not able to join the chat. So if you're able to drop in my email, that'll be great. If not,
Yeah,
if you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, that's another
I
option that I can.
am. I have dropped your LinkedIn.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. AB, feel free to reach out to me and then I will get you set up on GitHub for startups.
great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Team GitHub. Thank you, Hari. Thank you, Laksha. Thank you, Team Microsoft for Startups, bringing this all together. And yes, thank you. Thank you, all of you, once again. And hope you all have a great day. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Laksh. Thanks, Pat. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone, for
Bye
joining.
bye.
Have a good weekend.